Are we live?
Okay, technically, no. Technically, we are recording, but we are not. Oh, I'm alive. I'm. Oh, bye, Jake.
I fell.
So, um,
I wanted to get up and strut away in a huff, but I actually turned and realized I have about like 40 degrees of movement in my current streaming setup, so this is about as much as I can move.
I would do the same thing, but I bust up my knee, so it's gonna be
Mm.
difficult to actually move.
I twisted my ankle earlier this week,
God,
so neither one of us is getting away from the
we're
other very
we're
fast.
getting so old. All right, so welcome to Beer
Welcome
Protocol.
to yeah, welcome to Beer Protocol. This is our podcast slash video series on the game Marvel Crisis Protocol. A game of fun miniatures, light skirmish rules, and absolutely no complicated
No complicated
differences of
rules.
opinion on
No.
how basic mechanics like cover or line of sight work. No, it's everything straightforward and simple.
So what are you drinking, Jake?
Tea. I am drinking Uplift tea from oh god, I should have had their name in front of me. A new herbal tea business that one of my friends opened up back in the hometown. I believe called Farm Flow or Free Flow. Should have been more
Oh,
prepared.
you should really have been more prepared.
I was trying to get prepared for all the Marvel talk we were doing. I didn't
So,
think about the tea talk.
so, I have found something new at a store.
It's good tea.
This Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels by some small. I don't even recognize it. Guinness.
Huh.
It's must be a new brewery. Yeah, yeah.
Oh. Did they make a gluten-free stout?
Oh no, I'm gonna suffer. Oh, this is so freaking delicious.
Prepare to suffer for your art, James.
Oh my god, this. Oh, hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Hmm.
as you may not be able to pick up from sort of my sarcasm-laden intro, we have a episode lined up today where we're going to talk about a couple specific rules and interactions, namely cover and line of sight. There's a little bit of confusion if you're going off just the base rulebook on how these things interact and work. To the screen.
So, yes, as you notice, our format's a little bit different today. We have Tabletop Simulator opened because we're going to use this to show a few of the interactions. Now, one of the things that people really get confused about in Marvel Crisis Protocol is this is a 3D game, 2D. So if you are measuring line of sight or if you're measuring distance or anything like that, you basically imagine everything is flat. You don't measure at angles, you measure everything as a straight line. That's why if Jake takes one of the rulers and places it out there,
Oh, I
um,
should do things.
you should do things. You'll notice that it doesn't adjust to angles. It's always just a flat line.
It's a stick.
So just remember that. Like, if you're like, well, I don't know if he's staying on top of that bush and this guy, how far is that? No, you literally have somebody standing on a size 5 building. God bless you. Somebody standing on a 5 size building, attacking somebody on the ground, and it's the distance horizontal.
Yeah. If anyone tries to figure out by turning a stick up or down in any way, gently remind them they don't have to do that. They can
Nope.
just hold it flat and do their best guess to do sort of the drop fall down. They don't
Yeah.
have to like angle the stick. Okay. Without further ado, let's talk about line of sight.
So
So, according to the rulebook, James, what does
I,
line of sight mean?
I have it open here. A character has line of sight to another character or an object if a straight, unobstructed line can be drawn from any part of that character's base to another to the other character's base or the object. So it doesn't have to be center to center. It's like you could clip it from one side to another edge of a base, and that is line of sight, and it's unobstructed. So that's a little bit more difficult. If you look at, say, actually, Ghost Spider,
Shall we do
and
some examples?
yeah, Ghost Spider and Strange. Um, I can't tell from this angle very much, but it looks like she does have line of sight because I can measure it from the backside of her.
Yep. So my recommendation is when trying to determine line of sight is to grab one of the measurement sticks. In tabletop simulator, you can snap those to the base to make this easy. If the side of the stick is unobstructed, like again, you're just looking for a line, so it doesn't have to be like the whole width of the stick.
Right.
I don't know if you can see it from that angle, but I can hold the stick so that the right side of it is passing to from Ghost Spider to Strange without passing through the truck. Therefore, they have line of sight to each other.
Why is passing through the truck important? Isn't that just
We'll come back to cover.
well, you actually have to talk about that here.
I
So
don't. You can't make me.
I can, because
No.
that truck's a size 3. What size is Ghost Spider?
2.
What size is Strange?
So, actually, Strange's size doesn't matter. If
Oh,
Doctor Strange is checking to see if he has line of sight to Ghost Spider, then only the defending character or what you're trying to line of sight to, their size is the only one that matters. Strange could be 1,000 feet tall, but if Ghost Spider is size 2 and this truck is size 3, which this truck is size 3, then Strange can't see her.
but she can see
That's gonna
Strange.
come in. That's gonna come in very handy when Galactus eventually shows up in some way in this game.
Oh, that would be amazing. If you're either that or just a giant sentinel. Um, all right, so yeah,
Matter of time.
basically that is the rules for line of sight. As long as you
There
have.
is
Oh,
one more rule I want to talk about that comes up a lot. So this is a common point of confusion. If a character is on top of a terrain feature, add the size of the character and the size of the terrain together for the purpose of determining line of sight. What does that mean? So we have two characters on top of terrain features today. We've got Miles Morales. And we have Peter Parker,
and Ant-Man.
Spider-Man climbing on top of things. Who would have guessed?
And
Oh
also
yeah,
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. So we mentioned earlier that Doctor Strange and Ghost Spider can draw uninterrupted line to each other. Can Doctor Strange draw an uninterrupted line to Miles Morales? I think he can draw a line. Let's say Miles was a little bit further to the side, like here. So Strange cannot draw a line to Miles that doesn't pass through the truck. So now we get an interesting question. Normally, Miles would, since he's size 2, would be have the truck blocking his line of sight, so Strange could not see Miles. Miles is standing on top of a hedge, which is size 1. So for the purposes of line of sight, we add the hedge's size to Miles' size and count him as a pseudo size 3.
Mm-hmm.
But the truck is also size 3, so Strange still can't see Miles if that truck is in the way.
So how about line of
So
sight from say Ant-Man to Ghost Spider?
So, that is not a big deal because when a character is on top of terrain, they ignore that terrain for line of sight. So Ant-Man can ignore this truck for determining line of sight because he's on top of it. Doesn't matter where he is on top of it, even if it's like a big building or a small building, just picture it as a square and ignore that square for drawing line of sight from someone when they're on top of it. So Ant-Man can see Miles and Ghost Spider just fine.
Yep.
Now, another example over here is we have Valkyrie on this side of the fountain. The fountain is also size 3. Daredevil on this side of the fountain cannot draw an unobstructed line to Valkyrie and vice versa.
Yep.
That fountain is in the way. Neither one of them can see each other for line of sight. Peter Parker is back here on this size 2 car. So, when checking line of sight, Peter is size 2, the car is size 2, so that makes them a combined size 4. Valkyrie can see Peter Parker through the fountain because that 4 is now bigger than the size 3 fountain.
Can Parker
So
see her?
Valkyrie, huh?
Can Peter Parker see her?
Peter Parker cannot see her because he gets to ignore the car for line of sight, but he cannot ignore the fountain.
So even though she can see him, he can't see her. So you remember, it's from who's the aggressor in the action.
Yeah. Who's
and
checking line of sight?
checking line of sight.
Okay. And then, as another example, we have Venom, who is a size 3 character, chilling it back here behind the car. Valkyrie has. Let me just swing some stuff around. So, for easy snapping. So, Valkyrie looks like she cannot draw a line to Venom without passing through that fountain. So she does not have line of sight to Venom.
Because Venom's also size 3, Fountain's a
Mhm.
size 3, and therefore blocks.
Yep. Therefore, the Fountain is doing work.
Let me
So
ask.
just try to keep track of where the large pieces of terrain. Size 3 is going to give obstruction to a lot of characters. Size 2 will still give line of sight obstruction to a lot of characters, but there are several characters who are bigger than size 2 who will not benefit.
Well, Jake, Doctor Strange has flight. Why can't he just fly high and see Miles?
Because flight is a movement rule, dear sir, and has nothing to do with line of sight.
Why, thank you for that educational response. So,
Tea.
uh,
Just honey. Just tea.
so basically, when it comes to line of sight, always remember that the aggressor is the one measuring line of sight. Um,
Yep.
the person who is measuring line of sight ignores the terrain they're standing on if they're standing on terrain. And if you can have an unobstructed line from one portion of the base to another portion of the attacker, the defender's base, or the object, you can see it. If it
Yep.
crosses
And
something, unless
if
it's
you need to
smaller,
check, sorry.
unless it's smaller. So like if you were hiding behind a size 1, you're a size 2 character. Um, it will block line of sight. So like Venom couldn't hide behind the bush and be like, "No, you can't see me," because he's way taller than the bush.
It's also important to remember for checking line of sight that it does not matter how close the defending character or object you are what you're trying to draw line of sight to. It doesn't matter how close they are to the obstructing terrain.
Right, right. Uh, but that does
For
matter
easy
when it.
checking on the tabletop, you can use the side of one of the many measurement sticks in the game for easy checking, or if you want a slightly more precise, you can uh, get a laser pointer.
Yep,
That there's
yep.
several that draw just the red line on the table. That's what we have been using in war games for many years for quick and pretty accurate line of sight determinations.
Yeah.
And since this is a purely 2D game, that should be all you need.
Now, we move on to the really complicated one. Let's talk about if you have cover or not.
All right, so cover. If you have cover, it gives you an important defensive benefit in this game. If you have cover by meeting 3 conditions, then you can change one of your defensive dice into a block.
Mm-hmm.
What's important about the cover benefit, it does not have to be a blank die, like how some characters have abilities letting them convert count blanks as defense. It can be any face other than skull. The rule about skulls not being able to be modified still trumps the cover bonus.
Yep. So if you want to flip a wild for some reason, flip a wild to a block.
Yep. So this is a good way to convert. Typically, it's going to be either a hit or a blank into a shield. Okay, the 3 conditions for whether you have cover. The defender must be within range 1 of a terrain feature of the same size or larger.
So
So,
that
here
also
is
let's
ooh,
really quick. Um, being in
here's
size
the range 1
1.
stick.
Yep.
That
That's
is
actually a really nice
small.
stick. That's a small area.
Yes, so that's actually really important is you need to be hugging the terrain if you want to get cover.
So like Ghost Spider, Valkyrie, Daredevil, all definitely have cover. Venom's got cover depending on the angle.
Well, let's
Now,
go over the rest of the conditions real quick
okay.
before you go too much further. Um, so the defender must be within range 1 of a terrain feature of the same size as them or bigger. For example, Miles Morales is size 2, so under no circumstances can Miles get cover from the size 1 hedge he's standing on. Doesn't matter where he's at, what the other conditions are. Miles is bigger than the terrain. He cannot get cover.
Mm-hmm.
Venom is size 3. Venom is bigger than this car. He cannot get cover. Venom would have to go to either the fountain or the pickup truck if he wanted to get cover. Ghost Spider is size 2, so she could get cover from the pickup truck, the car, the fountain, even maybe one of the other hedges or the walls. She could get
Correct.
cover from all of those objects. So the first thing to check is what are the size differences? Next, a straight line can be drawn from any portion of the attacker's base to any portion of the defender's base through that terrain feature. So this is similar to how you check for line of sight. Before you even make the attack, you have to have line of sight. You have to be able to draw a line from the attacker to the defender that isn't blocked by a terrain piece bigger than the defender, like we just covered. For cover, you just check to see if you can draw a similar line from the attacker to the defender that does pass through terrain. For
So
example,
the greatest example we had is Doctor Strange and Ghost Spider.
yes, Doctor Strange is currently flying out in the middle of nowhere. He is too far away from this pickup truck to get cover, which is our last condition, which
Mm-hmm.
was the first condition. He has to be within range 1. Also, there's no line of sight coverage. So let's look at Doctor Strange versus Miles Morales. Again, Miles is too far away to get any cover from that piece. So let's say he wanted to attack Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is the right size, but let's move her out here. So she is within 1 of the things she would want to get cover from.
Mm-hmm.
But now, or actually even better, let's put her out in front of the car. But now, Doctor Strange cannot draw a line from Doctor Strange to Ghost Spider that moves through that truck
Right.
because she is too far off to one side. So Ghost Spider cannot get cover from the pickup truck because there's no way to draw a line between them that goes over this truck. So she'd need to be at this kind of angle in order to get cover.
Yes. Like even if it's a toe, like if you can draw a line from like the far edge of his base to the other far edge of the base, and it barely just cuts through that truck, she's got cover.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the last condition: the attacker is not within range 2 of the defender.
Mm-hmm.
So Doctor Strange is currently more than range 2 from Ghost Spider. Maybe it'll be easier to see for the camera over here. So therefore, Ghost Spider can get cover because she is greater than that distance away. However, Ant-Man. So, uh, Ghost Spider is within range 1 of the truck, so that condition's met.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Pretty much every line from Ant-Man to Ghost Spider goes through that truck.
Yes.
So that condition is also met.
So
Ant-Man can see Ghost Spider because he's ignoring the truck for line of sight, as we discussed earlier.
Mhm.
But all of the lines from Ant-Man to Ghost Spider go through that truck, so cover is still met. However, third condition, Ant-Man is within range 2 of Ghost Spider. They're just close enough. Therefore, Ghost Spider does not have cover from Ant-Man.
Correct. Now, once again, very important thing: the object you're standing on uh, does not count for line of sight, but it does count for cover.
Yep. So, like, the classic question we see a lot is, what does being on top of terrain give you? Like, what's the point of being on top of a building or being on top of a car like this? And the quick summary is, for line of sight purposes, most of the time, your opponent's not going to have any issue seeing you, no matter where you are on that building. So, like, it kind of leads to some dissonance. Like, say someone was on top of the X mansion over here, and they're just like, "Oh, he's so far away, and there's so much building model. What do you mean I can still see him?" And that doesn't matter for line of sight because you're standing on top of the hedge, and so your size is taller than the building you're standing on, so you can still see them. For cover purposes, then that building would be intercepting all the lines you could draw, so the building could count for cover. Okay, I think James summed it up quicker than I did. Line of sight doesn't really care. Cover does
So you
when
want
you're
to hear
standing on top of terrain.
the weird thing?
Tell me the weird thing.
So, a straight line can be drawn from any portion of the attacker's base to any portion of the defender's base. Okay, so say you have Miles right there right now. Let's say it's a size 2 that he's standing on.
Or we could look at Peter Parker over here, who is standing on a size 2.
So move him.
Let's say Hawkeye is the attacker.
Sure, move him so like almost just the back of his base is touching the terrain piece, and having him fall. Wow, he fell through the table. All right, that's not going to work.
I'll just hold him here. I mean, I
All
think
right.
per the rules of the game, if the model can't lay
Correct.
on the thing, then they can't stand there.
So
So this is probably about as good as
there
we
you
get.
go. So you would say normally, oh, but I can touch the front of Hawkeye's base to the front of Peter Parker's base, and it doesn't pass through the car, so therefore he doesn't have cover. But if you draw a line from the front of the base to the back of Parker's base
Yeah.
through the
Again,
model
don't
itself,
overcomplicate it. Yeah, just
so
remember the entire base is in play for drawing these
correct.
lines.
So like if he's like just if somehow you got it balanced so like the only the back edge is touching a piece of terrain, you can draw a line through the model itself to the back edge, and now that character has cover. It's a weird interaction of rules. You would not think it was like no. So whatever is the closest point, it says any point. So if like the back edge is on top of a piece of terrain, that edge is uncover.
Look, I found a line tool. Tabletop Simulator is great.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a weird interaction. It doesn't come up very often, but I have seen people say, "Oh no, but I can draw a line from the front edge to the front edge." And therefore, you don't have cover because it doesn't go through the line. It doesn't go through the terrain piece, but the back edge of the model is on the terrain piece.
Yep. Remember, for line of sight, you're just checking for the first line that is unobstructed to prove line of sight. For cover, you're checking for every line to
Yep.
prove that it doesn't go through a terrain piece.
Yeah.
So that might also help as well. Cover is not a huge benefit. It does help with dice math quite a bit, but it's intended to help the defender. So try to be generous with cover.
So
Um,
the way I understand,
People are more likely to be further than the one range away from cover, in my experience, than they are to be wrong with the line of sight with the lines. So, I mean, really, the it has to be within range one of the terrain is the thing that will catch people more often than not. So
right?
just check that first. That's going to determine most cases right there, and then check to make sure that the attacker is not within two of the defender. Now,
Also,
there are some cases, I'll mention real quick. There are some cases where there you'll get cover from different sources. For example, Storm's leadership ability has a similar rule to cover, which does not use these conditions. It just simply states whenever the attacker is more than range two away from the defender, they get the same benefit as cover.
Magneto's
That
Magneto's thing too.
Magneto has a tactic card which just says everyone within three of him gets cover. These versions of cover per the general guidance of cards trump rules.
Mm-hmm.
So you do not check these conditions for those specific versions of cover. Those are
Right.
not based on terrain. Those are just check the conditions on the card. In the case of Magneto's tactics card, they just have cover. There's no conditions. They just have to be within three of Magneto, and they just have cover. For Storm, they are checking that range too,
Mm-hmm.
and then that should be all you need to check.
So
Okay,
other
special cases
common
done.
yeah other common things I've seen where people are just like, no, Venom is definitely behind this car. The car is size 2, Venom size 3. He doesn't get cover from it. He's too big.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of people like, and that really comes down to when you place terrain and making sure that certain terrain is specified at what size it is to the beginning of the game. Because you get a lot of things like I would not consider that truck a size 3. It's still a size 3 because to me
But
it's still
look at
small.
that bed.
It's still a little small. Um,
Look at that truck bed. You could haul an entire body's worth of junk. Multiple bodies.
I would consider it a size 3. But that's something
How
you
many
should
bodies do you have to be able to haul to be a size 3 in this
that,
industry?
at least a garbage truck's full. Um, I wouldn't consider that a size 3, but it's you have to decide, hey, it's a size 3. So when you're running up to something and like, I have cover, always remember the sizes of your bases, size of your characters,
Yeah,
and the
size of
size of the
bases has
cover.
nothing to do with anything
Because
other than drawing lines.
if you look at the fountain's really small compared to the truck. The fountain's a size 3, the truck's a size 3, the car's a size 2. Hmm,
I think this is also a situation where talk to your opponent depending on the severity of the game. Maybe you just don't have large pieces of plastic to call terrain. As long as both opponents are agreed, you can assign whatever size you want to anything. Like say all you have is this fountain, and it's clearly not as big as a garbage truck, but call it size 3. You know, get a post-it note and put a 3 on it
Yeah.
if it helps you guys remember. But it is up to you. The size of terrain is not strictly determined by the size of the plastic model on the table.
Right.
It is simply an assignment that you and your opponent have agreed upon before the game starts. I always recommend try to get a mixture of terrain sizes. I think you're fine. You don't always need like a size 4 piece of terrain. There's really only a small handful of things that interact with size 4.
Yeah.
But I think a range of things of size 1, 2, and 3 are important.
Um.
Size 1 will never give anyone besides Rocket and Small Ant-Man and Small Wasp cover, but
Mhm.
it's really useful for people who like to throw things, because then you just have cheap, easy to throw things around to make the game more dynamic.
Yeah.
Size 2 is really important for blocking line of sight for some characters and making the battlefield a more varied and interesting place. And then size 3 for the same purpose, but also size 3 hurts real good when you throw it. So I think it's good to have a variety of terrain, probably majority size 2, a few size 3 pieces, and a few size 1 pieces to round it out.
Yep. So hopefully this helped you. Uh, it's this is actually the most difficult part of the game for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, especially the idea that it's 3D but it's actually 2D. Um, because
Especially people who are used to complaining about line of sight and cover rules in other tabletop war game
yeah,
systems.
yeah, it's
Like the crowd of people who never did figure out why being inside a forest in War Machine and Hordes gave you cover bonuses
if you
as
think
opposed to being on the edge of it.
yeah, if you think about it this way, it's a very dynamic game. You're not just like these characters are just not standing where they are. They are moving around. There's a lot of dynamicism to the game that's not being displayed on the board. So like yeah, you might be on top of a size 3 object and punching somebody on the ground, but it doesn't always mean that you're like extending your arm really far and smacking the person on the ground.
Just
Um,
pretend that you picked up a brick and threw it real good.
yeah, it's stuff like that, like a basic strike. Um, so that's like the hardest thing to wrap your head around. But once you understand these basic rules, it's always from the aggressor. Always measure from the aggressor to the object they're trying to affect. Ignore everything else. Um, don't
In
try to
general, just
yeah
go ahead.
don't try to like don't as a defender. Uh, put it on the attacker's uh, onus to do it.
As the defender, also make sure that you know whether you have cover or not.
Right.
Like
Um,
don't assume if you're trying to get to cover to use cover, then that's on you during your turn to measure and make sure you're within one of that terrain piece.
uh,
Um,
what we also do in a lot of cases, um, I'll tell Jake or I'll tell whoever I'm playing, hey, it is my goal to move this where Peter Parker has cover from Valkyrie. I want to basically say to my opponent, my goal in this move is to basically make sure that you have to move or I get cover.
yep, and that works well with friendly games, especially when you have some of the imprecision of the digital interface. I don't necessarily think that's going to be cool in like competition games.
I mean, I still do it in
You got to
competition
be really
games.
clear with your intent on that one because it sounds like you're trying to get another fraction of an inch. Just be really clear. I think the better way to phrase that is, I believe I have cover. Um, would you like to confirm, or are you okay with me saying I have cover here?
That's a better way of phrasing it. Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
Tell your opponent like, hey, my goal is to have cover. Are you cool with this being here to have cover?
again, like asking, "Are you cool with this?" I don't think is necessarily good table talk with your opponent because it sounds like you're asking them to give you something, as opposed to saying, "I believe I have this. Would you like to confirm?"
Okay.
There's no action there on their part other than to confirm, and if they okay and they believe you, they can just say no and move on.
All right.
Like you don't want to put expectations on your opponent to feel like they're giving you concessions, especially in a competitive environment.
That's right. You force them to give you concessions. Just beat them out.
Or have fun.
Hmm. What? Have fun?
There is no
Ridiculous.
fun in a competitive event.
Thank you.
Crazy. So I hope this discussion was helpful, along with some of our sort of demonstrations. Overall, cover and line of sight we're hoping are going to be relatively quick to adjudicate our tabletop. If it comes up a lot, again, one of those little laser pointers that draw a line is really helpful and quick to resolve things like this. And the biggest thing for cover is just check whether they're within one of a piece of terrain of their size or bigger. Like that covers like 90% of disputes.
Yep. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It is one of this is pretty much the most difficult um, idea to get your head around in the game. Um, and then once you get this, you're it's easy. So, uh, thank you for watching. If you'd like, go ahead and subscribe. Game off.
Game off.